Now on BBC Two, Newsnight with Gavin Esler.
The row over HS2, Newsnight has obtained government figures which predict some areas could be big losers if the scheme goes ahead. Aberdeen could lose up to £220 million a year, Cambridge £126 million a year. We'll hear from HS2's chief executive and from the Deputy First Minister of Scotland. Good evening. Like one of those magic cabarets where the audience is invited to pick a number, any number. The numbers to do with the costs and benefits of building a new high-speed rail link are open to a lot of guesswork. But the government insists they have the experts assiduously studying the case to build HS2. The accountants KPMG have concluded that it could be a £15 billion a year boost to the UK economy. Now, Newsnight, through a Freedom of Information request, has discovered that behind that national figure, cities from Cambridge in the east of England to Bristol in the west and Aberdeen in the north of Scotland could suffer substantial losses from the scheme as currently planned. David Grossman has the story and the figures they did not want to publish.
You got accentuate the positive.
No one can accuse the people behind HS2 of being pessimists. Glass half full doesn't really come close. The HS2 glass, according to them, is brimming over with benefits. Last month, the Transport Secretary unveiled a new study by economists at KPMG describing the fantastic benefits that they said would flow from the new line.
High Speed 2 will make Liverpool stronger, Leeds stronger, Sheffield stronger, Birmingham stronger, Manchester stronger, Britain stronger. A £15 billion annual boost to our economy.
Unfortunately, nowhere in this 58-page report, nor in its 34 pages of technical appendices, was there room to detail the towns, cities and regions that are going to lose when HS2 begins full operation from here at London Euston. But thanks to a Freedom of Information request, we can now reveal that data, and it shows some big losers right across the UK.
The study says that by the time HS2 is built in 2037, all these red dots could be big losers in terms of the new line. Now we can put figures to the dots. Cardiff could lose out £70 million every year. For Peterborough, £66 million a year. For Bristol, over £100 million a year. Norfolk could lose nearly £200 million a year. And Cambridgeshire is set to lose £235 million. Even Aberdeen's oil-fuelled economy is susceptible, apparently, and could lose £220 million every year. That's 1.3% of its GDP.
It's really disappointing to see, obviously, a negative impact on the northeast of Scotland. Indeed, looking in some further depth, it's compounded by some negative, indeed relatively larger impact on Dundee. And when you put that together for the northeast, you're looking at a lost GDP or output of over £330 million, which is, significant to say the least.
We showed the figures to economics professor Henry Overman at the LSE. He used to be an expert advisor to HS2 Ltd. He says it stands to reason that some locations will lose out.
When a firm is thinking about where to locate, it thinks about the relative productivity of different places, the relative wages, etc. And HS2 shifts that around. And so if you are on the line and you get a productivity improvement, that makes you a better place than somewhere off the line that hasn't had that productivity improvement. And the other way in which it happens is that firms compete for business. And so firms that are, say, in Birmingham and benefit from the productivity increase are more able to compete in the British market. And that gives them advantage relative to firms, say, in Bristol that are not on the line.
One of the other big losers not on the line, according to the figures, is Cambridgeshire. Business leaders here are sceptical that their specialised knowledge-based economy centred around the university will be harmed by HS2. But even so, they believe the investment in the line could be better spent.
If we really want to drive our economy forward in the UK, as everybody tells us they wish to, then what you should do is actually put that money now into the really successful economies like Cambridge, and make sure that we've got the infrastructure to be able to continue the kind of contribution that we make to UK PLC.
But could the damage to some parts of the UK done by HS2 really be as large as these figures suggest? Professor Overman believes not. He thinks both the positive and negative impacts of HS2 are overstated by a factor somewhere between 4 and 6.
So if the projected benefits from this report are £15 billion a year, what do you think we should discount that to?
Well, I think the kind of benefits that they're trying to pick up here, I think the number would more reasonably be maybe 2 to 3 billion. I think that really we should be looking at the opportunity cost of the money. If I was off the line, actually even if I was on the line, my major worry would be, could we be spending 40 to 50 billion pounds worth of money on things that would achieve more benefit for the British economy? And I'm pretty clear that the answer to that is yes.
So far, the debate around HS2 has been dominated by those near the proposed line who are concerned about damage to their communities and those near the proposed stations, many of whom expect to gain. The release of these figures, suggesting a cost to communities far away from the line, could increase the pressure on the politicians to reconsider.
David Grossman there. Well, joining us now is Alison Munro, Chief Executive of the HS2 project. Alison Munro, in all the 92 pages of the original KPMG report, you didn't give any figures for the places which would actually suffer annual losses. Why did you hide the bad news?
We didn't hide the bad news at all. As your report
showed, it wasn't in the report.
We published a map which showed, as you referred to, the red and the green dots. The numbers that you're talking about now are the numbers that lie behind that map. So we were quite open.
So we needed a freedom of information request to get these figures, and you were convinced that you were absolutely open about these losses. You trumpeted them just the same way as you trumpeted the £15 billion
they were in the
benefit
report,
the economy.
They were in the report that was published in September. We've not hidden that fact at all. I really think this is really being totally overplayed. I don't think anyone would really expect, if you're providing a high-speed line, which is a major north-south new network linking 8 of our major cities, you would expect that the places that are directly on that network or benefit from the released capacity from it, those are the places that will benefit most from that investment.
Right. Just to be clear,
you can't look at that investment in isolation.
Are you saying to us tonight that these figures were clearly printed in the report, and you were delighted to tell the people of Kettering they could lose 2.3% of GDP, Suffolk West 1.4%, Dundee 1.9%? You told people that in the report, did you?
In the report, we published the map which showed the places that would win relatively and those that would not win relatively. We didn't provide the figures. There was a lot of information in that report.
I see.
But as I say, the general picture was there for people to see.
The general picture, but not the figures?
We didn't provide the figures, but if you'd let me finish, what this is showing, as I say, I don't think that's surprising, that the places that are on the high-speed network, the places that enjoy news services because of released capacity, those are the places that would benefit most from High-Speed 2. But High-Speed 2 isn't the only investment that the government is making.
Right.
Over the next 5 years, it's planning to spend £73 billion in transport infrastructure.
But just to be absolutely clear, you did not provide the figures. You didn't provide the figures in the report.
We did not provide the figures in the report, but we've been entirely happy to provide the figures. We're not hiding anything here.
You're happy now to provide them, now that we've got them?
We're absolutely happy. I mean, the map was in the public domain. There's no secret here that High-Speed 2 will particularly benefit, as you heard the Secretary of State say, our major cities which are on the network and places that will also benefit from services on the existing lines that get extra services. So you would expect, I think no one would expect High-Speed 2 to deliver the same benefits in Cornwall as it delivers to Leeds and Manchester.
Well, we're not arguing that. What we would expect is that someone engaged in a major project spending 50 billion or more of public money will be open with the public as to who will benefit, how much they will benefit, and who will lose and how much they will lose. And you weren't doing that.
Well, as I say, we published the map that showed the places.
Okay.
Now, and I say the point is, in the map, if we go to the map and the numbers that you're talking about, they show only the effects of High-Speed 2.
Why should we believe any of the figures that you come up with? And it's all voodoo, isn't it?
Well, these are projections that we're having to make into the future. We've done the work with KPMG because the standard appraisal that we do, so we've also calculated benefits and costs of the transport investment. Those don't capture the transformative effect of a project like High-Speed 2. So you would expect to see a concentration of growth in the future in the areas served by High Speed 2. This is against a background where the economy will be growing. It's not that the other places are losing, they're not growing as fast as the places that will be served by High Speed 2. But I come back to the point that you're just talking about High Speed 2 in isolation. The government is spending a massive amount of money to help other places of the country. So, for example, electrification of the Great Western Main Line that will help Cardiff and Swansea, electrification of Midland Main Line to places like Corby, massive investment in the roads programme as well, 24 billion for the Highways Agency over the next 5 years. So you can't just look at what's happening with High Speed 2 in isolation. Clearly that is going to most benefit
but
the places served by it.
What you can't do is put this question of connectivity in isolation. The KPMG figures assume the transport connectivity is the only supply side constraint to business location. It isn't.
Well, it recognises, I think if you read the report, you'll see it recognises the fact that it is making that assumption, and clearly to achieve...
But it's a wrong assumption, isn't it? Because people move businesses because whether there's good labour source, skilled labour, they go whether they can actually build on land, whether that's available. So to make the assumption it's all about connectivity is just nonsense.
Well, what it's showing is what the connectivity benefits of High Speed 2 could bring. I mean, clearly, High Speed 2 is not going to solve every problem, or every issue in the country, but if those other factors are there, what this is showing is that the connectivity that High Speed 2 can bring really substantial benefits to the economy for the future. And it's not just the GDP effect from the KPMG report. We need to remember that the railways are becoming increasingly full. It's not just a case of looking at benefit cost ratios and so on. Unless we tackle the capacity on the railways, the economy will come to a halt if we don't actually have the ways for people to get around, for businesses to do their business, and we'll have more lorries travelling on the roads carrying freight.
Okay.
So we need to address the capacity issue.
OK, we'll leave it there. Alison Munro, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Now, the Scottish National Party have been holding their annual conference in Perth today, and shortly before we came on air, I asked Scotland's Deputy First Minister Nicola Sturgeon what she made of those figures Newsnight had obtained.
Well, the figures that I've seen that you're reporting tonight simply confirm and underline the view of the Scottish Government. HS2 will be stronger, the business case for it will be stronger if it comes to Scotland, if it links up Scotland and England, but also the benefits to Scotland obviously require it to come to Scotland. That's why the Scottish Government is talking to the UK Government to make sure that the proper planning is being done to look ahead to when it can come to Scotland, and we'll continue to work very hard to make sure that that happens. And I think these figures that we're seeing tonight really do reinforce and strengthen the case for that.
But as you know, Aberdeen could lose 220 million a year, 1.3% of GDP. Dundee and Angus loss of 1.9% of GDP if it goes ahead as currently planned. So do you then oppose it as currently planned if it's not extended to Scotland?
Well, obviously the figures that we are seeing tonight are of concern, and these are figures that we have now seen, but they back up what our concern has always been, that if you have HS2 that only goes as far as the current plans, then that will be to Scotland's disadvantage.